abrogation comes in, it's not used as a basically the defense of contradiction. Abrogation is very real. We already discussed this. But for instance, that verse, Surah 2:190, is not abrogated. So that still is considered part of the Quran and the message. So we take what the fanatics are doing, and this is why they're wrong, is that they're the ones who are cherry picking. They're basically looking at these violent verses, interpreting their anger and their hatred.
Hold on. I got everybody panic. This is the third time it happens. The Boobas have attacked, so I got to remove him as co-host, and I have to invite him. So this is the third time this happened. It's Boobas. Okay, so your claim as a moderate fundamentalist is that you are embracing the whole Quran, whereas the fundamentalist extremists are the ones who are doing the quote mining. Is that okay?
They're the ones who are doing the quote mining, in that we have to remember this too. All those surrounding passages that are self-defense, and they're completely ignoring them. For instance, when you saw Revolution Muslim and they were being basically interviewed, remember they said, "Oh, it's commanded in the Quran to terrorize the believers." If you look at that passage, it's not what it's saying. It's basically saying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that we will terrorize the believers, and then right after that it says, "Remember that day," and it's talking about the Battle of Badr, whenever the Muslims were outnumbered 300 to 1,000.
Sorry, did you say the Battle of Butter?
Badr. Sorry,
I'm not trying to be
Badr,
funny,
B-A-D-R.
but to me it just sounded funny.
No, B-A-D-R. You can say batter if you want. But
Okay.
it says like batter anyway. And so it's Badr.
I can't believe it's not butter.
But so basically you have to understand not only the surrounding passages, which are very easy to read. This is why I can't understand why people say, "Well, why is the Quran so violent?" I'm like, well, I believe in self-defense, so I don't understand what they're getting at. But at the same time, the message that is inside the Quran is not simply what you're reading. It's about also when those specific verses were revealed, and also taking them as a whole. And that's the problem with the fanatics, is that they're reading it in such a literalist fashion. And what I mean by literal is through their own perspective and their own hatred. And they're using these verses to justify their actions. And I want to touch up on one more thing too, and I think this will be very enlightening to some people. Do you want to know the reason why, for instance, Al-Qaeda, kills innocent people? Well, we consider them innocent. They are innocent people. Like, for instance, 9/11. Do you want to know why they do that? This is their interpretation.
Because George Bush says they hate our freedom.
Well, besides that, they don't hate our freedom. This is their interpretation. They believe that because a democracy, this is their misunderstanding of a democracy, they believe that because we vote our leaders into power, that we are making our leaders attack them. So they don't think of us as innocent people. That's why they're hurting us. Their misconception. That's the reason why they hate democracy, is because they think that we are voting people to attack them. And it's horrible. I mean,
okay.
It's a horrible. Sorry, I just wanted to rant about that.
Let me ask you this. This brings about to another point. Who's the guy in the last video showed? That was a proportional response. Basically, if you just go to YouTube, search HappyCabbie, you'll find all the videos, including one calling me a sexual predator wanted from Texas. No doubt, by the way. So DawahFilms, I definitely know how you feel when people are saying bad things about you. But anyway, would you concede that it is a valid point that the Quran is easy to misunderstand?
Actually, to be honest with you, I don't think. I mean, if you read those passages, I mean, maybe I'm not trying to be condescending when I say this, but when I read those passages, it was evident to me, like right there and then. And I really feel like when I talk to a lot of skeptics, and I'm not talking about you, HappyCabbie, because I know you're very sincere, but when I talk to a lot of skeptics who want to quote the Quran to me and say, look at all the violent verses, they always leave out passages, like when they quote Surah 2, verse 191, they always leave out 190. And I can always tell that they're quoting from like Skeptic's Annotated Bible, or they're quoting from Wikipedia. I'm sorry, but to me it feels like they actually have never really read it. I mean, it's not, to me, it's very easy to read. I mean, unless you're looking for it.
This is the point that I'm trying to make. My case is the Quran is hard to understand by evidence of so many people, especially in the Muslim religion, misinterpreting the Bible, which is essentially what you said of these fanatics. They're cherry picking, they're twisting the passages to suit their own needs. If this were truly a divine message from God, and the Quran was supposed to correct the corrupt messages that that got messed up before, and God said, you know what, one final time, Muhammad, you're the guy, clear it up night and day so everybody can know exactly what I want. Why then is the Quran so hard to understand? And if I cannot remember the verse, but you talked about this with D.B.R. Jones, there's a passage where it basically says nobody but Allah can understand the Quran. Do you remember that conversation you had with D.B.R. Jones?
Yes, the actual
what is that verse, by the way? Can you read that verse in case somebody wants to look it up?
Oh God, I can't remember. But what the verse was actually saying was that there are definite verses in the Quran. Basically, there are verses that are very clear, and there's some ambiguous ones. Now, the ambiguous ones. Now, if you want to know what ambiguous passage is, a lot of scholars will agree with you. Would agree on this one. If you look at Surah 7, for instance, the ayat, and go to Ayah 1, it's Alif Lam Mim Sad. Nobody understands.
Yeah, I don't understand what that means.
That's what that's considered in Arabic. Even that's just like letters. We don't know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to reveal there. And what a lot of scholars, and I think even a hadith, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam specifically stated, and I apologize, I can't remember the references. This is a lot of information. From what I have read, he states that these verses will not be revealed, their meaning will not be revealed to the end days, basically to the end times, then you won't understand what they mean.
But if Allah wanted to get his message across, because people corrupted the Torah, people corrupted the Bible, previous prophets, just really couldn't cut the mustard and get the message across, why then would Allah send a message that is so hard to understand and easy to misinterpret? Because people have misinterpreted it.
Yes, people have misinterpreted it, but I want to say this very clearly. I don't think people are saying, well, the message is bad because people misinterpret it. I don't think it's very difficult to misinterpret. I think people misinterpret it based on their own desires and based on what they are willing to look into and research. And the problem is not with the message, it's with the people. We don't understand. I think people want, what I think people are asking for, and I'm not saying you, but what I think is, some people are asking for a lot, is that they want a message that is so perfect that it's going to force them to understand. It's going to force them to agree with. It's going to force them to read it all in the same manner and not have the free will to look into themselves and not to have the intellectual, integrity or to even go further to research it. And I'm not saying that everybody's always going to agree on everything, but I think that there are certain verses in the Quran, especially the violent ones, that are so explicitly, it is right in your face, what it's trying to say, that for anybody, I think it's really the fault of the person. And I'm not trying to be mean, but I just think that we need to start taking responsibility for our own errors and our own lack of interpretive abilities.
Okay.
So,
let me ask you a question another way. Can you hold up to the camera again your Quran?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, my point is, why turn it to the side so people can actually see how thick it is. In my opinion, if God wanted to get his message across, it would be nothing more than a pamphlet. Especially if he wanted to correct the problems, he would say, it's like, you know what? Don't kill a bunch of people. Don't be out there plundering other cities. Pay your taxes. Do this, and it should be a simple, clear-cut message, especially if it's from God. And the Quran came because previous messages, such as the Torah and the Bible, were misunderstood and corrupted. It's basically God saying, listen, I want to straighten